There are a lot of dangerous places on our lovely planet Earth. Some are dangerous because of natural causes, some are dangerous because of military conflicts going on there, and some are dangerous only because they exist. But your average anti-Semitic daily news corporation has said that there is a specific most dangerous place on planet Earth. Suwalki Gap. What is Suwalki Gap and why is it so dangerous, I hear you ask? Well, if you absolutely hate history and think that it's lame and boring, like watching James Corden not crushing his car for 15 minutes while there is a celebrity sitting next to him.
You playing the drums?
Play the drums
No
yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Just shredding on the drums.
Oh, wow. I just had the weirdest dream. You know you're driving, right?
Then you can skip to this timestamp. Anyways, for all average Wikipedia history section consumers. After World War I, the famous Treaty of Versailles proposed the reconstitution of Poland, which meant that Germany had to give away a lot of its territories back to Poland. And one of those territories which had to be given away was the region of Danzig. For Poland it meant that it would have access to Baltic Sea, while for Germany it meant that Königsberg would be turned into an exclave. And thus World War II begins. Angry Austrian Mustache Man expands its territory, then angry Georgian Mustache Man overtakes that territory, and World War II ends. After many years of Soviet Union developing these countries into Redditor's wet dream, the Cold War ended with many countries regaining their independence, among them Poland, Belarus and Lithuania. But one territory didn't go back to its owner, and that was Königsberg. But since those times, Soviet Union had renamed it to Kaliningrad. Kaliningrad didn't even become its own independent country, it just became one of Russia's oblasts. But in that moment, Suwalki Gap had become what it is today. It is surrounded by 4 countries, Russia, Lithuania, Poland and Belarus. Only thing, it wasn't a big deal at the time, until Poland and Lithuania joined European Union and NATO in 2004 and in 1999, so they wouldn't turn into whatever Russia has become today. But before that, Russia had created its own knockoff brand of European Union and NATO. I am talking about Collective Security Treaty Organization, or CSTO, and Commonwealth of Independent Nations, or CIS. If I were them, then instead I would call it Commonwealth States of Independence, because then they could call it CS. But now, since I have answered the question, what is Suwalki Gap? Now let's answer the question, why is it so dangerous? Well, the main reason of course are the 2 major opposing forces, Russia and NATO. And since the dictator of Belarus is ready to do anything to just get some clout from Russia, a lot of people are pretty sure that Belarus would just let Russian troops right through. And the gap itself is extremely dangerous for the Baltic nations, since if it's closed, then Baltic nations no more have any access to any of European Union or NATO members. You might ask, well, since Poland and Lithuania is in NATO, then why doesn't NATO provide enough troops for the gap to not be closed in any kind of scenario? Well, it's quite hard to make a gap open all the time in a war situation if it's only 65 kilometers wide, or around 40 miles wide. The gap is as wide that you can barely fit 3 Liechtensteins in it, or around 34,755 Arnolds. But it has become a major issue for NATO and EU ever since the annexation of Crimea done by Russia. And it has become a very huge worry ever since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. But that doesn't mean that it has only been a problem to NATO and EU and the Baltic countries and Poland. It has also been a large problem for Russia and Belarus. You see, Russia has had problems delivering its goods to Kaliningrad since it's an exclave and it is separated by European Union and NATO territories, its largest arch nemesis. That's why in 1990s and early 2000s, Russia has tried to negotiate with European Union, Lithuania and Poland to create a corridor from Kaliningrad to Belarus so they could deliver goods and services. Of course, this was completely denied by Lithuania, EU and Poland, as this would not make up for them. India and Lithuania did make a negotiation with Russia that it can deliver its goods through Lithuania at any time. But ever since Russia had started an invasion and war in Ukraine, it has become a larger problem for Russia since the EU is literally bombarding Russia with a shit ton of embargoes. But that increases the chance that Putin might go, "That's it, no more I want those Baltic states. I'm gonna make its own Russian land. I'm gonna call it Putingrad. And to make the Baltic states more Russian and more cooperative with me, then I'm just gonna hand out everyone a free Adidas tracksuit." But is the Suwalki Gap truly the most dangerous place on earth? Definitely not. There are still such places as Iraq, Syria and Birmingham, where everyone can get hurt very easily. But let's not also forget about the country whose prime minister has shot himself in McDonald's, where literally every animal has a potential to kill a human. Or literally any other Latin American country whose most popular sports type is running away from the kidnapper. So Suwalki Gap is no way near the most dangerous place on planet Earth. But it has the potential to be one, since it's mainly a problem for Baltic nations and NATO. But will it ever become one? Only future will show. Thank you for watching.